Good morning, everybody. So, I teased on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter that I would be, I'm changing my days, so we're moving on to Fridays just because I got a new job and blah, blah, blah. But I am also starting a new project. So it's going to be, Fairytale and Folklore Fridays, and I think my camera just went out of focus. Anyway, so Fairytale and Folklore Fridays, where I begin my Friday. To get ready with me, I'm not going to be telling you what's on my face, but I will put it in the description box. What's going to happen is I'm going to, throughout the week, I'm going to read and just kind of script out what I want, and it's going to be some kind of a fairy tale or a folklore. You can suggest any to me. I am a-okay with that. Any of you who are new here, hi, welcome. My name is Jess, and so now on Fridays, I am going to be starting Fairytale and Folklore Fridays. And for today, I thought before I get into all the fairy tales or the folklore, I'd like to give some background on some of my favorite, my favorite fairy tale authors, because it's pretty dark. So we're going with, today, it's going to be Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. Isn't this exciting? The Grimm brothers. So you may recognize the names from that movie that came out in 2000 something. It was like 2009, The Brothers Grimm, which is about the brothers. But pretty much everything that happened in that movie was fabricated. They did write all these stories. Well, I'll explain that later. Anyway, so that's what we're going into. It's Fairytales and Folklore, beginning with just some background on the lives of my favorite fairy tale authors, Jacob and Wilhelm. So, let's get into it. Alright, restarting here. So I did already prime my face. It's the rose primer. Anyway, so, stories we know as fairy tales, they offer us different kinds of wonders, not wonders. And, we aren't supposed to believe in them. We know that there are no real houses made of gingerbread, and that princes don't transform into bears. We know that, straw cannot be spun into gold. It's fake, but we, in all reality, we know that children can lose their families, and that there are families that don't always have enough food to feed themselves. It's just, that's reality, man. I don't know how I feel about this brush. But fairy tales aren't always super different from the world we live in today. They just, they're just told in a way that gives us happy endings. At least, that's what you think. But do you know the real story behind them? Do you know where a lot of these favorite fairy tales come from? Do you know that they're not as bright and bubbly and friendly as you think? And I'll figure it out. So, now that we've kind of established that, so just kind of the baseline here. Do you know when most of our favorite fairy tales originate? Because, let me tell you, it's not what you think. They aren't as happy ending as you would be led to believe. So, a lot of the stories that we grew up with, they weren't always so happy. And oftentimes, the happy endings weren't even there. They were very dark and horrible, and honestly, they were kind of amazing, at least in my opinion. So, here we are today. What I'm going to be beginning with, seeing as I'm starting with the background of the Grimm brothers, some of my first few tales into this will probably be some of their original works, which, aren't gonna be as happy as you want them to be. So we're gonna have a lot of these are going to be from a collection I have of, fairy tales by the Brothers Grimm, Jacob and Wilhelm. You might recognize the names from, I was wrong, it's not 2009, it's 2005 film featuring Heath Ledger and Matt Damon. Like I said, the movie's about the brothers, but it's all the events are fictitious. Sorry, it's not real. So, we're gonna go into detail about their background and what they actually did. And how, they contributed to all these stories. Alright, you ready for this? I don't know if I am. Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. They were born to Philip Wilhelm Grimm and Dorothea Grimm. Jacob's full name being Jacob Ludwig Karl Grimm. He was born on January 4th in the year of 1785. Yeah, we're going way back there. Right? And then Wilhelm Karl Grimm, his brother, we just said his name a few times. He was born on February 26th of 1786. He was, about a year younger, probably like 10 months, 11 months, something like that. Anywho's, they were both born in Hanau in the Principality of Hesse, which today would be known as Germany. It's Germany, okay? It's a region in Germany. That's what that is. Let's not confuse ourselves. I'm already confused. So, these two were the second oldest surviving siblings in a family that had 9 kids. Alright? They were the second and third oldest, excuse me. These brothers, they were born into a pretty great family, honestly. It's a highly respectable family, and, all that jazz. So their father, Philip, he was a lawyer. Alright? A lawyer. He's a smart cookie there, yeah. But on top of being a lawyer, he was also the town's clerk. Later on, Philip would be appointed as a district magistrate for the countryside town of, I'm going to mispronounce this, I'm sorry, Germany, Steinau? Something like that. Anyway, this role gave the family more prominence in their town, or in their community. And as with most happy stories, their comfortable, fancy new life, it just wouldn't last that long. Sorry guys, your good life is just kind of going down the toilet. So, here we are. Their happy life came to an abrupt end, alright? That's what happens. Because, so it came to an end as, Philip Grimm, their father, he died of pneumonia, in 1796, when Jacob was just 11 and Wilhelm was only 9. So following the death of their father, the family they just plunged into poverty. They had nothing. And, this forced the family to relinquish their home, as well as, all of their servants. And they were just grief-stricken. All that jazz, I'm gonna say that a lot, I'm sorry. Anyway, so Dorothea was now relying on her father, Johann Hermann Zimmer, as well as her sister, Tante Henriette Zimmer. And, she was relying on them for financial support, because they were struggling hard. was struggling real bad. So these two boys, they, they understand what's going on, and they knew that the adult responsibility would that now be passed on to them. They were the oldest, they were the two oldest, and, family needed help. So, and seeing as Jacob was the oldest living son, only at 11 years old, he was now forced to assume adult responsibilities. I mean, later on, he would share these responsibilities with his brother, Wilhelm, along with the constant reassurance from their grandfather, would go on to give these boys a ferocious work ethic. Like, they were strong on their work, man. Don't even doubt it. Alright. So, here we are in 1798. Their aunt, if you remember her name, we're just gonna call her Henriette because I don't want to try and, pronounce her name, but I'm gonna screw it up anyway. The Tante, I think it's Tante, but we're gonna call her Henriette. So their aunt Henriette would arrange and pay for them to go and attend the Friedrich Gymnasium in Kassel. It's a really fancy school, I guess. Alright, so that's what she did. She was pretty chill. She cared about her nephews. She wanted to. Alright. Now, that same year, though, their grandfather passed away. So without a male provider, the brothers only had each other. They've relied heavily on each other for, friendship and everything. Because due to them being impoverished, they were set apart from all other students in their school. Because everyone else was from, these wealthy families, but the brothers weren't. They were just there. It was paid for by their aunt. But despite their very different temperaments, the brothers were still very, very close. Okay? They were best friends. Let's be honest. But, Jacob, he was more on the introspective side, whereas Wilhelm, he would go on to be more outgoing. Yeah, he was an outgoing, friendly kind of guy, I have no idea what I'm doing with my makeup, by the way. I'm just kind of going with it. Okay, this is really hard to talk and do makeup. Damn, I like it though, like a challenge. Alright. So even though, so Wilhelm continued to be very personable and very friendly, He was more of a social butterfly. He was very outgoing. Even though he did tend to suffer more with some ill health issues, He easily got sick. More often than not, as I said, these brothers were best friends. They would rely on each other for friendship because they didn't have anybody else. And then, but despite, everything and, having that super strong work ethic, these boys threw themselves into their studies. And, sorry, I'm just struggling today. So, with their strong work ethic and throwing themselves into their studies, these two boys would go on to graduate at the top of both of them. They would both graduate at the top of their class. So, Jacob would graduate in the year of 1803, followed by Wilhelm in 1804. Because, Wilhelm's younger. He's the little brother. And then, So after they graduated from Friedrich Gymnasium, they would go on to attend the University of Marburg in, I don't know, it's just the University of Marburg. I didn't look too far into that one. Sorry, guys. I let you down, I know. Alright. again, due to their impoverished status, they were set aside from all the other students. And yet, originally, they were actually denied admission to this school. And they were only allowed to attend after they had requested and had obtained this, it's a special dispensation to study law. So they went to law school. Okay? But while their poverty excluded them from all the extracurricular activities, they didn't really mind too much. Extracurriculars, social events, they didn't care. Okay? This outsider status, it was whatever. It worked in their favor and allowed them to pursue their studies with extra vigor. Alright? Hold on, I'm gonna do some eyeliner. I'll be right back. I was going for a smaller wing and it kind of got away from me. It's whatever now. Anyway, back to our tale of these two brothers. So, their brilliance, because these boys were genius. They were genius level smart, alright? That didn't go unnoticed. Quite the contrary. Alright. Friedrich Karl von Savigny? I don't know. Don't worry, we'll come back to him later. He lectured on criminal law, and he was so impressed by his student, Jacob Grimm, that he would open his personal library to this boy, to this young man, and, among this collection of rare manuscripts, Jacob was now being introduced to medieval German literature for the very first time in his life. It's pretty great, right? And then Wilhelm would go on to join him and go on to join Jacob in his new fascination as well. And then, now, von Savigny, I think that's how it's pronounced. I don't know. I don't speak fluent German. I wish I did. The Grimm brothers would also befriend a young man named Ludwig Achim von Arnim, as well as another young man by the name of Clemens Brentano. Again, I'm sorry, Germany. I am mispronouncing these names. I know it. And they were two key figures in the German Romanticism. So the German Romanticism was a movement that looked back on, the Middle Ages as a simpler, better time. I don't know how, but it did. Yes. Hold on. Gotta do this real quick. So, they looked back on the Middle Ages as a simpler, better time. Before the Industrial Revolution had drove the people from the lands and into cities. That type of thing. That's what they were into. Weird flex, but okay. Whatever floats your boat, broski. So, what's going on here is I'm screwing up my makeup and it's fine. Everything's fine. Alright. So, this time that they were romanticizing, it was before the Enlightenment promoted science and reason at the expense of intuition and emotion. So therefore, it was a matter of some urgency to preserve the culture of the Middle Ages, lest it be lost forever. Right? Kind of dramatic, isn't it? It's fine. Come on. So with great enthusiasm, the brothers dedicated themselves to their studies, to which in his autobiography, Wilhelm would write, quote, "The ardor with which we studied Old German helped us to overcome the spiritual depression of those days," end quote. Though, at this time, there was also another equally urgent matter at hand. the financial position of the Grimm family. Okay, so in 1805, Jacob was forced to abandon his studies and take on a job. Yeah, he was kind of forced to get a job. Sorry, bro, but you were. Gotta provide for that family of yours. And now, at this time, he would become financially responsible for his mother and his remaining siblings. So, he left school. And then there was, but his job and his earnings, they weren't enough. He wasn't able to feed his family as much as he needed to. He didn't have the money to do it. There was no money available to him. And in a letter that he wrote to his aunt, Henrietta, once again, I cannot pronounce her first name, so Henriette Zimmer, he writes saying that, quote, "We 5 people eat only 3 portions daily." All right, 3 portions daily and only once per day, end quote. And then skip forward a couple years, 1808, their mother, Dorothea Grimm, she passed away. Really sad, right? These 2 boys are now, and all their siblings now have no parents. Their grandpa's dead. Life's just kind of crappy for them lately. Dad's dead. Grandpa's dead. It's just Auntie, and she's not taking care of those kids. Come on, she's taking care of herself. I don't know. There's not much information on that, on where their aunt was after their mom died. So, she passed away, and now Jacob he'd go on to get a job as a librarian at Castle, later being joined by his brother, Wilhelm, in the same library. Or probably the same position, I guess. My camera keeps going out of focus, and it's driving me nuts. Also, my eyebrow stuff is fucking up. Anywho's, so they became the librarians at Castle, and while the pay still wasn't great, at all, it was still really bad. This position gave them, it gave them plenty of time for their research. Also, in this time, that friend of theirs, Clemens Brentano? Yeah. He, of German folk literature. That's the word that I couldn't seem to spit out. English is hard today, okay? And, with his collection of folk literature, he would now turn to the brothers for their assistance, okay? And it's worth remembering that in this time period, Germany was occupied by the French, It was completely occupied by France. And that, to collect and preserve tales of the German people, I'm so sorry, I cannot speak English today. So, to collect and preserve these this literature, or the history, to collect and preserve the traditional tales of the German people. Sorry, I really cannot speak today. It wasn't good. It didn't look good. Alright? It was seen as an act of defiance. But, what's more is that reminding the German people of their inherited culture, it gave them hope that, one day it might be possible for them to unite again as one nation. So, you give hope to Germany that's currently being occupied by France. That's defiance, It's defying France. Screw you, France. Not really. I want to visit France someday. It's just a random note, but, whatever. So it's they're helping their friend, but at the same time, defying, France. Who cares, What could go wrong? Over the next few years, the brothers, they began to collect and gather their fairy tales whenever it was possible. They would begin to invite their friends, their colleagues, their acquaintances, and tradespeople into their home, and they would write down all these stories that they were hearing. One of these storytellers was a woman by the name of Dorothea Weimann, and Dorothea, well, she just so happened to be the daughter of an innkeeper. Or of an innkeep. I don't know if that's how you actually pronounce it. Anyway, so Dorothea's father kept an inn. And this inn, it just so happened to be on the main road to Frankfurt. And, she grew up listening to all these travelers, grew up listening to the travelers and their tales. And then in all, she would go on to contribute over 40, I believe, that's what it was. Yeah, 40 different tales in all of their variations. So she's given them quite a bit of stuff. And, and she would tell these tales to Jacob and Wilhelm over and over again and again. And more often than not, she wouldn't change a single word. Nothing was changed. It's kind of interesting, right? She's giving these brothers some good tales and doesn't change a damn thing about it. Here. With her not changing anything, this is actually what the brothers valued the most. The stories being told in their original form. So, initially, the brothers completely refused any rewrites. Like, they did not want rewrites. They did not care why there was a rewrite. They didn't want it. They're kind of dramatic like that. They would say that, quote, elegant language would only contaminate the tale, end quote. While also arguing that, quote, in their purest form, one could hear the voice of the German people, end quote. So, these brothers are a little crazy, a little cuckoo pants, but, I get it. They want to give their people hope. And they can't do that if, it's a bunch of made-up stories that constantly being changed and rewritten. They want it raw and real. Sorry, that was just a random thing that popped into my head. Raise the question of basically that are all stories pretty much all German in origin. And Rumpelstiltskin, that one, it seems to be German in origin. It's, because a stilt is a post that helps to support a building, but a Rumpelstilt is it's a little goblin. It's a little type of goblin that comes along, and, he rattles those posts, okay? That's what a Rumpelstilt is. He's a goblin. Going. So, however, though, a lot of the other stories are more likely to come from elsewhere. I mean, think about Dorothea Weimann, and her father's inn. Wouldn't it be just as likely that with all these travelers coming in and out, Maybe they weren't all German. Maybe they were from elsewhere, and they were telling stories that they learned elsewhere. Her father, he also came from a Huguenot family that fled persecution in France. Similarly, there was also another woman by the name of Marie Hassenfluke. Again, I'm sorry, I probably mispronounced that. And, who told the brothers the tales of Little Red Cap and Snow White. And she had come from a well-to-do French-speaking family. All right? Hassenfluke. Now, originally, the brothers had collected around 50 tales or so that they had in turn sent to Brentano, though for reasons unknown. We honestly have no idea why. He never did anything with them. This would then have the brothers go on and plan to, they would then resolve to create their own collection of tales. And the Children's and Household Tales featured 86 stories and was published in the year of 1812. It had some scathing reviews, obviously. So if you think about the original tales, they're not so friendly. Right? And the text, it was heavy with footnotes, as well as extensive detail, great detail as to their sources and where their sources were from. So, it's a whatever right there. There would be critics, and they would go on saying things that, most of the tales in this weren't actually child-friendly. They weren't good for kids. They were not suitable for children, and all that jazz. I mean, honestly, have you heard of them? They're really, really dark. Cinderella, her stepsisters would actually go and mutilate themselves with a knife. They'd take off bits of their foot just to try and fit into the glass slipper. It's really, really dark. Not to mention that Hansel and Gretel, it was actually their mother that abandoned them in the forest. Alright? But, even though sales for this book, for their, collection, weren't good, at all. They were really, really bad sales. Others would continue to collect and publish even more of them. Also, their scholarship, that would remain impressive throughout everything. And let's not forget that their rigorous approach to everything, to how they did things, it has not only influenced the study of fairy tales, but it also established a baseline for it. Alright? It's pretty rad. And the modern day researchers, they validate the brothers' approach. Hold on, please. Alright, so now, the brothers, they would even go on to argue that, that the variations of these same tales across nations, alright, nations, across many nations, it pointed to a shared cultural history deep in the past. For example, in recent analysis of the different variations of Rumplestiltskin, it suggests that, that tale may be well over 4,000 years old. But there's also Little Red Cap, which we would know better as Little Red Riding Hood. That one seems to date back to the 1st century AD. It's old, okay? And then so W.H. Auden, I didn't look into him. I'm sorry. He's just a name I saw. Anyway, he seems to be correct to insist that the Grimm's fairy tales, they're an essential part of Western culture, stating that they are, quote, next to the Bible in importance, end quote. And so if his argument stands to be so convincing still today, it's due to the stories that these brothers collected and have now spread across the globe. And they've been translated into over 160 different languages, you know, and reimagined in so many forms of art, most notably animation. Thanks, Disney. Disney. Damn them. Sorry about that. I'm back. My phone was like, you're out of space. So while I was clearing up some space, as you can see, I had some ashes. So now, I'm going to get back to our tale. I'm going to get back to the actual background of the brothers. So, through everything. Camera's out of focus a little bit. Thanks. Their real success, it didn't come along until like 1825. And then finally, they get, because that's, you know, finally when they gave in and they bowed to the critics. And, you know, they published an edition of their tales that was meant especially for children. It was child friendly, it was safe, you know, all that jazz. Damn it, it's stuck in myself. I got so much. So in this new edition, they took out all the footnotes and they added in some illustrations. Excuse me. And it was referred to as the small edition. So in the small edition, it would also temper the violence down, so nothing nearly as violent. You know, for example, the princess would kiss the frog rather than throwing him against a wall, because that's what really happened. You know, Sleeping Beauty would be woken up by nothing more violent than a kiss. And evil mothers would be replaced by evil stepmothers. And perhaps most famously, in the case of Snow White, her evil mother was replaced by a stepmother. You know, this would also, in 1825, this would also be the year that Wilhelm gets married. He would be the younger brother. He's married. Mariette marries a woman by the name of Henriette Dorothea, though it is actually pronounced Dorchen. It's the official pronunciation of it. So she went by Dorchen. Anyway, so it's Henrietta Dorchen Wild. Again, she just went by Dorchen. You know, they go on, get married, have 4 kids. 4. Now, Jacob, he would never marry. Ever. Don't know why. He just didn't. He don't want to get married. It's fine. Marriage isn't for everyone. They would remain married until Wilhelm's death in 1859. Again, Jacob never got married. And he did continue for most of his life to live with his brother. And his brother, sister-in-law, and their children. And then for the next 3 decades, up until their deaths, they both continued to revise the stories, and more often than not, it was just to cater to the ever-changing tastes of the people. I know we just jumped to like 3 decades ahead, but we're gonna go back to the year of 1830. Both the brothers would be overlooked for the position of chief librarian at Castle. And so, in turn, they would move to Göttingen. I think that's how it's pronounced. I don't actually know. In the Kingdom of Hanover. And they would both take on positions in employment at the University of Göttingen. Jacob would be a professor as well as the head librarian, whereas Jacob would only be a professor. I did not look into what they were actually teaching. Oops, sorry. But this position, it would only last for about 7 years. Hang on, I'm gonna do this. That's what I need. I'm just gonna forget everything today. So, yeah. that position only lasted about 7 years until, well, they were dismissed from their posts. In 1837, both of them, their posts at the university were dismissed, and, you know, that would be after joining the rest of the Göttingen 7 in protest. So, the 1830s, it was a period of political upheaval. I mean, like, it was a peasant revolt. Political upheaval and peasant revolt, sorry. It was leading up to, the movement of for democratic reform, you know, which was known as Young Germany. Hold on. So, even though the brothers themselves were not involved or were not aligned with the Young Germans, several of their colleagues were. And, you know, these colleagues, they had reacted against the demands of Ernest Augustus, who at the time was King of Hanover. Now, Ernest here, well, he dissolved Parliament in Hanover in 1837, so he's kind of a shithead, isn't he? At least he seems to be. After dissolving Parliament, he also was demanding oaths of allegiance. Oaths of allegiance from all civil servants, which would be including the professors at the university. So for refusing to sign his oath, all 7 of the professors, hold on. Yeah, all 7 of these professors, sadly, they were dismissed from their positions. They didn't, you know, so 3 of the 7 that were dismissed, they were deported from Hanover. This was including Jacob Grimm. But he did just kind of end up going back to Kassel, and later on he would be joined by Wilhelm, Dorchen, and their children. So now in 1840, von Safny and Bettina von Arnim, they would successfully appeal to Frederick William IV of Prussia on behalf of the Grimm brothers. They were offered, you know, successful appeal, you know, so they ended up being offered posts at the University of Berlin, and in addition to that, in addition to their teaching positions, the Academy of Sciences would offer them stipends so that they may continue their research, you know, and everything. And then after the revolutions in 1848, the German states, in 1848 in the German states, the brothers were both elected to the civil parliament. Their political activities, though, they were kind of short-lived. It's whatever, it's politics, right? Who cares? Because, you know, the hopes for a united Germany, they were dwindling down, and disenchantment was just kind of growing. So it's kind of shitty. Sorry. It would also be in the 1840s that Jacob, he would resign from his post at the university and see to the publication of The History of German Language. Cool, dude. Wilhelm, though, he would continue teaching at the university until the year of 1852. Then after retiring from the teaching, both brothers, they would just devote themselves to writing the German dictionary for the rest of their lives. Now, in December 16th, 1859, Wilhelm Grimm, he would die from an infection in Berlin. Jacob, though, he became reclusive and just deeply saddened and upset by the death of his brother. Wouldn't you be? Come on. But he would go on to continue his work on the dictionary until his own death on September 20th, 1863. also in Berlin. Their dictionary, though, god damn, it never was published. Sad to say, they never even completed it. They completed all the way up to the word Frucht, which is German for fruit. So they finished the word till the word fruit before they both died. Cool. Jeez. Jack Sipes, he's a reporter. I'm not sure from when. I didn't look too much into him, but I do know he's a reporter. He would write of the Grimm brothers' dictionary, as well as their very large body of work, saying, quote, symbolically, the last word was Frucht, end quote. The evolution of these tales, though, they continue today. Like, just in 2009, though, 1 year after Obama was elected president, The Princess and the Frog was released and retold and released by Disney. And it was featuring an African-American princess. So the Grimm's Fairytales, based off the Grimm's Fairytales, which is this book I have here. It's awesome. I love it. It was based off the original English translation by Margaret Hunt from 1884. You know, it will continue to offer wonders and stories that reflect our world today. Isn't that interesting? So, again, I just wanted to give everyone a little bit of background into something I'm deeply interested in. Like, I love fairy tales. I love lore, all that kind of stuff. It interests me. And knowing that a lot of the stories and tales that I grew up with didn't originally end with happily ever after. They were a lot darker and everything, you know? It's so good. It's so interesting. So I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. Let me know some of the ones you want me to talk about. Different kinds of lore, different tales. Send them my way. But yeah, I think that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you have an excellent day. And yeah. Bye. See you later.